Welcome to the ICG's Digital Academy webinar series. I'm Lucy Wernick, Manager of the ICG. Today's webinar is about the IR35 legislation presented by Liz Norman of recruitment consultants, Elizabeth Norman International. Just for those who aren't members or who aren't familiar with the ICG, we are a hub of about 400 independent market researchers within the UK and abroad. We collaborate and share knowledge and experience for the benefit of members, clients and advertisers. So if you're a client or an agency, find your perfect consultant or team of consultants through us. Use our website or contact me on manager@theicg.co.uk to find out how we can help you. If you're a small market research business and haven't yet joined us, please do. Fees are just £7.25 a month. And if you're a supplier to the market research industry, an ad in our supplier directory is only £100 a year. We look forward to hearing from you. We're grateful to Perspective Market Research Services for sponsoring this webinar. Perspective Research Services are a data collection and data processing specialist agency with 22 years experience offering international CATI, nationwide face-to-face, qualitative services, home and focus studios and mystery shopping. Throughout the webinar, please type in your questions into the question box on your screens. We'll ask a range of questions out at the end of the session. If yours isn't answered, however, feel free to email us on manager@theicg.co.uk and we'll get it answered afterwards. If you wish to tweet about this webinar, please do so copying in @theicg. And don't forget that all our webinars are MRS CPD accredited, so if you need a certificate afterwards, email us. Note our forthcoming webinars. We have one in a few weeks' time about the new MRS Code of Conduct. We've got one scheduled for mid-March about new screening criteria. And we hear from our 4 2019 finalists of the Award for Independent Consultants about their submissions at the end of April. All our webinars are free and open to everyone, so please feel free to share. So, now introducing our speaker for today. Liz Norman is the founder and CEO of Elizabeth Norman International, which specialises in recruiting both permanent and contract roles for the market research, data and insight industry. With over 30 years' knowledge of the industry, Liz has partnered with a number of leading industry bodies, as well as working as a mentor to both individuals and clients. Liz cares passionately about our industry and has been struck over the last months with how few contractors know anything about the IR35 legislation. So now we will hand over to Liz and she will do her webinar.
Hello, hopefully you can
Liz,
all see me.
we can see you in full screen.
Brilliant.
We can't see your slides.
You can't see my slides. Okay.
No.
I can see my slides. Has that made any difference?
Well, we can't see you anymore, but we've gone back to the holding page.
Okay. Let me think what to do. I can see it perfectly fine. Show
Okay.
screen.
Liz, there we are, I've got it now. Now just put it in full screen.
Okay, you've got it in full screen. Can you see it? I've got it in full screen.
Yeah, go ahead. Thank you.
Okay, sorry, I'm as you can see not a technical person, and this is in fact the first webinar I've ever done. So hopefully you can see it, at least part of the slide, and at the end I'll take questions. So I mean, the first thing I want to point out is obviously I own a recruitment company. I'm certainly not a lawyer. And even if I was a lawyer, I have to say that nobody can be sure of the impact of IR35. All legislation, when it first comes out, nobody knows how it's actually going to be enacted, whether there's going to be loopholes. So I can only give you an overview. At the end, I will give you the details of Lucy Tarrant, who is the lawyer that I have spent a lot of time going through this with. And also, I've got a lot of advice from ASPCo, who are the professional regulatory body for the recruitment industry, so that what I give you is as factually correct as possible. So, yeah, that's the first slide, only I'm not able to move it forward. Why is that?
Just
okay,
there we
next
are,
one.
fine.
Okay, so IR35 is coming into effect on the 6th of April 2020. Now, when I say it's coming into effect for the private sector. It was actually brought into the public sector in 2017. And since then, the recruitment industry has been trying to stop its full implementation, mainly because we believe it's going to impact on the flexibility of employment. And indeed, figures do show that the number of IT contractors has dropped quite a bit in the last year since its implementation in the public sector. So we have had one breakthrough. They're not going to apply it to small companies, which is important for our industry because we have a lot of small companies. But nevertheless, we think it will definitely now come in on the 6th of April 2020. We think it's very unlikely now that they will be able to stop it. So bad news. Right, and so what is IR35? Well, essentially, it's all about tax. The government believe that by having as many freelancers and contractors as we do in this country, they are missing out in billions on tax. They're doing this in two main ways. First of all employers pay employer national insurance contributions of 13.8% on what they pay you. So you don't see that in a payslip, but they are paying that in addition on all employees, but they're not paying that on freelancers, and the government wants that money, in short. The second thing is that freelancers on the whole can pay themselves more tax efficiently. If they're limited companies, they can pay themselves dividends, they can claim expenses, they can put quite a lot of their normal sort of home costs, for example, through as tax deductible expenses. And the government want to stop that as well. So in short, that's what it's all about. They're expecting to raise billions as a result of it. So the next slide. I'm actually going to address the second point here first, because when I have talked to people about it, a number of people have said, well, it doesn't apply to me because I'm a limited company and I work for lots of other organisations. It's in exactly that sort of organisation that the government wants to stop. So absolutely, it applies to you. The other point is that moving forward, if you, the freelancer or the contractor, don't pay the right amount of tax, then actually it's not going to be you that is fined by the government, but the employer. Which perhaps sounds a bit weird, but government feel that if it's the employer that is fined, then they can be pretty sure that this law will be taken seriously. And indeed, several companies, I've just written down a few, but Barclays, RBS, GSK have already come out and said that they won't be taking on freelancers direct moving forwards as a result of this legislation. So sadly, yeah, that's going to be the impact. Now, there is a bit of good news. I said that the recruitment industry has been lobbying to stop this legislation, and what the government has agreed is that they won't apply it to small companies. Now, these are small companies as defined by the Companies Act, and I know this sounds really boring, but you should just have a quick look at this because this is your way around it. If you are working for a company that any of the two things on this slide apply, so a turnover of 10.2 million or less, 5.1 million or less on the balance sheet, and 50 employees or less, then it's fine to carry on working for them as you are now. Whether the government changes that moving forward, we don't know, but for the moment, they're absolutely fine with that. And I think one of the interesting things for the industry is, does that mean that moving forward, freelancers are all working for small companies, allowing them to be flexible, and it's the larger ones that miss out? So yeah, I think this is quite an important point. If you're working for a larger organisation, or a larger organisation wants a freelancer, they can employ someone or a small company as long as they cover, or as long as they meet all 3 points on this slide. Now, these are legal points. They're not very clear, so I'll just try and go through them one by one. So the first one is substitution. This means that the freelancer must confirm to the employer that if they aren't able to work one of the days during the contracted period, they have someone that can do it in their place. So if you think, if it's a small company that you were employing, if Fred was sick, then Frida would be able to pick up the phone and do the work in Fred's place. It's basically saying exactly the same, that you must have a setup where there are other people around that can do the work if you're not able to. And you have to provide written confirmation to the employer that this is indeed the case. The second one is supervision, direction and control. And this essentially means that the freelancer should set the agenda. Almost think about it as if you were taking on a plumber, for example, then you wouldn't tell the plumber exactly what to do. You'd say something like, the boiler's not working, and the plumber is the one that would decide on the approach, advise how long it's going to take, tell you how much it's going to cost, and would complete the work without you closely supervising them. You have to meet as a freelancer exactly the same criteria. So the company would have to come to you with the issue, and you would be the one that would suggest how to approach it, how long it's going to take you, what it's going to cost. If you can do that, then you can legitimately work for the employer as a contractor or as a freelancer. And the third one is mutuality of obligation. This one really is very hotly debated, and almost everything you read about it says something slightly different. But essentially, it refers to financial responsibility. So if the job isn't done to the employer's satisfaction, is it acceptable not to pay the contractor? If it is acceptable not to pay the contractor, then you'd be absolutely fine. You'd be what they say outside IR35, and it would be okay to work for that employer as a contractor. And then to pass this last criterion, it does help if you're not reliant on that company for income. You should certainly have professional insurance. It's useful if you're working for more than one employer, but it's not just about that. It's also about the employer saying, yeah, it's absolutely fine not to pay them if they're not doing a good job. Okay, so they're the 3 criteria. if you have any more questions on that, please let me know. The next slide is all about SEST. So this is a government tool for evaluating whether the job or the contract that they are giving you is one that is legitimately outside IR35, i.e. it is possible to employ you as a contractor. This has just been, it's had loads and loads of criticism, this tool, but it has just been reviewed. I haven't had a chance to look at it since it's been reviewed and seen how much it's improved. It's absolutely essential that employers use this tool to check that the role is okay. If they have used the tool, then they can say to the government, yes, we've used it, this person qualifies, and they reduce the chances of being fined by quite a lot. But it's useful for you to look at too, so you understand the obligation that the employer's got to meet. The other thing, I did look at it just before this webinar, and I noticed now it's got an employment status manual, which has got a lot of detail in it. So it might be worth you looking at that as well in order to see if you will qualify or not. So that's SEST. So if you are a larger organisation and you are currently employing freelancers or contractors and they don't meet all three of the criteria that I discussed earlier, substitution, supervision, direction and control, and mutuality of obligation, and bear in mind you've got to meet all three, then what can you do if you desperately need a freelancer? Well, there's two things that you can do. You can employ them through a third party. So you can employ them through someone like us, a recruitment agency, or you can employ them through an umbrella company, which essentially is a sort of outside employment organisation. We're not quite sure what organisations are going to do moving forward, but that's certainly an option. The other thing that they could do is they could permanently employ you as an employee, but they could put you on a 0 hours contract, and in that way you know, it doesn't matter what hours you work. Obviously they are not going to go through the paperwork of doing that unless you're a fairly long-term contractor, but that also is an option that you could discuss with employers. So the next slide. So I just thought I should finish by just taking you through the things that you should do, because I know that it's quite complicated. So the first thing I would do is check the size of the employer, of the organisation that you are freelancing or contracting for. I've given you the three criteria for a small company. It only has to meet two. It's actually very easy to look up a company's accounts, and when you do that on the government website, it says whether a company is small or not. So it's quite easy to get that information. The second thing is, if you know it's a large company, I don't know, it could be anyone from Diageo to Kantar to Ipsos, then what are your options? Well, you could try to go outside IR35, i.e. legitimately still work for them as a contractor. If you're going to do that route, you have to, in writing, confirm that you have a substitute. You have to get confirmation from the client that the role is outside IR35, they having used the SEST tool. And you have to change contracts to reflect that this is the way that you are working moving forward, and that the role meets all the criteria, so substitution, supervision, and mutuality of obligation. If that isn't possible, if this role doesn't meet all those criteria, then you can work inside IR35, but you need to do it either by becoming an employee of that organisation or working through a recruitment agency or an umbrella company. So it's possible. There are ways around these things. I think that's it. I think that's all there is to say on it. I realise I've sort of galloped through what is quite a confusing subject. Hopefully you have some questions.
We do. Oh, we do. I've been collecting them here. So everyone feel free to carry on typing in your questions and we'll try and get through as many as we can. So just going in order. Right, there's a question about, are we sending out and publishing the slides at the end? And also, can this person share these slides with their small company clients? So that's for you, Liz.
Yes, I'm trying. I've been doing as much as possible to inform the industry. I'll be honest and say that most companies at this stage are very unsure about what they want to do, and a lot of them really don't want to listen. But yeah, I'm doing what I can. I'm very happy to send out slides to anyone, both contractors and clients.
Okay, well that's great, and we'll put them on the ICG website then as well.
Yeah.
So thank you. Next question about the criteria for substitution. Does the substitute need to be guaranteed by the freelancer? So if I can't work a specific day, do I need to provide another person for doing the agreed work on that day?
You need to say that you can do that. I mean, obviously, in reality, for example, if you're a qualitative freelancer and you're moderating groups, then you need to know another moderator who can do those groups for you. I can't. They don't expect you to guarantee that they'll be free on the day that you're sick. So they may be sick too, or they may have gone on holiday, but you've got to guarantee that you know somebody that potentially could stand in and do that work. As I say, think of it almost as if you were a small company. If I was sick, there are other people here that could have given the webinar. I don't know if any of them would have wanted to, and I can't guarantee that they would all have been here and not sick, but there are other people around who potentially could have done if I was sick. Yeah, does that make sense?
Okay, if you'd like, if it doesn't make sense, the person that asked that, feel free to type it in and ask some more. Next question. Somebody's written umbrella organisation, question mark, question mark. I think that's when you were talking about ways to deal with this. Isn't that the way all these care workers and nurses got into trouble via payment via loans?
You're right. I mean, I don't want to get into the politics of it. The umbrella, there are a lot of umbrella organisations that have bad reputations with good reason, but not all umbrella organisations are like that. I mean, it's not a field, it's not an area that I'm expert in. I have been told to advise people not to use an umbrella organisation. Really, I don't have any personal experience of them, so I can't be sure that is correct. I know only what I read in the papers, like other people.
Okay. Is there a time limit? I.e., if I've not been working for a company for 2 years, does this apply to me?
No, it's only for work that is being done from April the 6th, 2020. So no, they're not going to go back and catch people historically. It's only for contracts moving forward. That said, some of the people listening may well be on a contract now, and expect to still be working with that organisation in April 2020, which, let's face it, is only a couple of months. And if that is the case, they need to start thinking about getting the contract changed now, because it takes time to do these things.
Okay, thank you. What, if anything, have the large companies who have decided to stop using contractors said about pay rates for the workers they will no longer be using as consultants?
I think this is something that, in fact, actually, I should have said this in the slide. And I mean, pay rates, it is undoubtedly going to have an effect, because if the employer puts somebody onto their own books, i.e. employs them direct, then they are still going to have to pay the 13.8% employers' national insurance, which they didn't have to pay before. So undoubtedly, they will want to drop the rate by 13.8% in order to make sure that they're not having to pay any more. In addition, of course, as a freelancer, you've got to think, I will probably end up paying more tax. So absolutely, it does mean that people are likely to be earning less money. And that's a very important point. If the employer doesn't employ the person direct on a 0 hours contract, but they put them through an umbrella organisation or a recruitment company, they are then not only going to have to pay the 13.8%, they are also going to have to pay the recruitment company's fees. So that is, it's going to further increase their costs, and therefore make them think even more about the rate that the freelancer gets at the end. So yeah, it's bad news for rates and the amount that you take home. There's no doubt about it.
Okay, thank you. If you work for a third party, does that also have to meet the 3 criteria to qualify as small?
If you work for a third party, no, because then at that point you're an employee. What the government wants everyone to do is basically be an employee, not a freelancer. So the reason that large companies can get around it by putting people on their payroll or on the payroll of a third party is at that point they become employees, and employers' NI has to be paid, and also you can't pay yourself as a freelancer from a tax point of view, so the government get more money. In short, they want everybody to be employees.
Okay, somebody's written, do you have a sample contract?
I don't have a sample contract. I am sure that those will be written and come out at some point. The industry hasn't, so the recruitment industry, I'm sure, will be writing such things. They haven't written them as yet. As I mentioned at the beginning, we have a regulatory body which is very similar to the MRS called ASPCo, and I am sure that they will be producing those. But bear in mind that they are really for the client. It's the client that is liable, and it is the client that should give you the contract. Does that make sense?
Well, I think so. Obviously, people can't respond.
Hopefully.
Feel free to comment. Okay.
Yes.
What is the impact on costs and charges if I'm hired by a recruitment agency, e.g. stopgap? I think maybe you've responded already to the above question.
I mean, what we don't know is whether employers will swallow the extra cost, or whether they will say, no, I'm not prepared to pay more for the freelancer, and they pass all the costs on by reducing the freelancer's rate. Or the third option, of course, will be that they say, actually, we're going to do without freelancers altogether. And our fear, the recruitment industry's fear, is that it is the third option that will be most popular.
Okay, we've got quite a few, but we'll try and race through them. Your last bullet was impact on your rate of pay. What were your comments here? I don't know whether the person couldn't hear.
So I can quickly run through it again. Rate of pay will almost certainly drop. It will drop for two main reasons. First of all, employers' NI needs to be paid. That's 13.8%. Somebody has to cover that. It will either be the employer swallowing that cost, or they will be passing it back down and reducing the rate to the freelancer. And the second one is that a third party, i.e. a recruitment company or an umbrella company, may have to take you on as an employee. They will have to be paid for that. And again, will the employer swallow the cost of that, or will they pass that down by reducing the rate that they're paying the freelancer or the contractor? At the moment, that's not certain, but it's certainly something that every single freelancer or contractor, a conversation they should be having now with their employer.
Okay, if you put the freelancer through an agency, would the same rules not apply, i.e. they would be outside IR35 and have to pay tax and national insurance?
They're outside the legislation because they are employees. They are employees of the recruitment company. And as employees, yes, the recruitment company pays employers NI, and it will also pay PAYE tax on their behalf.
Okay, is this applicable to foreign companies?
No, this is English legislation.
Okay.
Tax legislation is usually for a particular country.
How does working through an umbrella company differ from working through a limited company?
So an umbrella company is a very large organisation. Somebody mentioned that, you know, lots and lots of nurses go through it, that essentially acts as an employer. It's like working for a company of 300 people. It's your employer. The employer pays national insurance, employers' national insurance, and it also pays PAYE on your behalf. Recruitment agency would work in the same way. If you're a limited company, then nobody is paying the employer's NI, a 13.8%, and you're not having to pay PAYE. So it's a very different legal setup.
Okay. Okay, if okay with you, Liz, we'll go through more questions for 5 minutes, and then anything else that we can't answer, if I send it to you, would you be okay to answer it afterwards?
Yeah, no, that's not a problem.
Okay, thank you. So somebody said, I thought IR35 had been around for much longer. Clearly, this is a new implementation. Much of IR35 seems to assume that a freelancer, this person says, I hate that term, is working for a solid block of time. I've just had that discussion with a large agency I work for, where I work for a number of days, but delivering stuff where I determine the timetable. They have decided all their subcontractors or freelancers should work through Juno.
Right. I mean, really, the idea is to stop people working as contractors or freelancers. So maybe that will get rid of the term, and the person asking the question won't have to hear it anymore. And it is encouraging them to work as employees, either of the organisation or through a third party. Now, a lot of freelancing is done on a part-time basis, and so this legislation will hit in particular people who are working only 2 or 3 days, but that doesn't stop. You know, if you're regularly working for 2 days for someone like Kantar, just, you know, taking them from the top of my head. And you've been working for 2 days for Kantar for the last 2 years, and you are likely to continue working for Kantar for 2 days or 3 days for the next 2 years, then Kantar would be better off putting you on their books as an employee. Now, I don't know what that would mean for your rate, but that's what they should do. And then you could go on a 0 hours contract, which means that if they didn't need you for 2 days, they don't have to employ you for 2 days. But if they wanted you for 4, they could do that as well. So that's probably the best option in that case.
Okay.
Hi everybody, it's Arthur here, listening in the background. But I just had I'm aware of the Juno Kantar tie-up, because I've been doing work for Kantar, and it's actually a good thing, because you get given a contract by Kantar. Well, you're awarded the work by Kantar. They then get Juno to issue the contract, and it doesn't have to be for days, but that's the way that the system is set up. So they've got an online portal, and you may have a job for £5,000. You put in 1 day's work for £5,000. You don't have to, work at a day rate and work it all out. It's just one contract. The good thing is you don't have to go through Kantar's vendor system to be set up as a vendor for them, and Juno pay you within 14 days without question. So I think that something like Juno, and there's another system that another client of mine in the US uses, which does the same thing. It takes them out of the loop. And I guess if Juno have got fewer than 50 employees, then they're outside the scope anyway. Sorry, just to chuck that in.
Yeah, they're probably inside the scope, but because they're taking you on as an employee and paying employers NI, then that's absolutely fine. I would say that just generally about all recruitment companies and umbrella organizations, well, I don't know about umbrella, but normally they pay you just as they would a normal employee. So it's not like being a vendor when you get paid. Well, I know I'm often waiting 60 days for payment, and often more than that. They pay you either at the end of the week or the end of the month, absolutely on time.
Okay, just a few more. Is it a problem as a contractor to carry on if the big company you're contracting for is the one that's liable?
If the big company has confirmed with you that it's absolutely fine to carry on working as before, then as it's them that is liable, that's fine. I mean, I would be surprised if a big company was prepared to agree that, unless they could be absolutely certain that the role is outside IR35. But yeah, if they're happy to confirm that is the case, then carry on.
Okay. If I'm deemed to be an employee, should I put my rates up to compensate for the higher tax national insurance load?
Well, in the end, that's a discussion that you've got to have with the employer. What they'll be trying to do is push rates in general down. So I suppose one way of negotiating would be to go in with a higher rate, but you've obviously got to think about what is the market rate and what the employer will stomach.
Okay. Regarding working via the recruitment agency, would we then invoice the recruiter?
Absolutely, yeah. You become an employee of the recruiter, and yeah, you would invoice them, or more normally give your hours, but whatever. And then once you've done that, they would we pay actually within 10 days. Juno obviously pay within 14, but yeah, then they will pay you as agreed.
Okay, I've got two related to the ICG. I'll read them out, they're similar. If I'm a sole trader without employees of my own, would an adequate substitute for me be an associate, e.g. another ICG member? And then similarly, does it do proposals for helping people to find substitutes through the ICG network work?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I mean, as I've said, we don't know exactly how it will be implemented yet and what the loopholes will be, but I think one of the things that will undoubtedly be explored is informal networks of people, allowing them to provide substitutes. You've still got to meet the other three things. So you've still got to meet the supervision and the mutuality of obligation, but a good start would certainly be to find somebody through the ICG or any other organisation that could be a substitute.
Okay, last question, and then as I said, I will forward the others with the people's names so we can respond to you. Would me being in control of what I am designing and delivering, plus determining when I am working, qualify as an exemption from IR35?
Yes, but you'd only meet one of the things. So if you are designing, implementing, advising on hours, advising on fee, absolutely, then you meet the supervision criteria, but you still have to meet the substitution criteria, and you still have to meet the mutuality of obligation, i.e. you are not financially dependent on that company, and if they decide not to pay you because they don't like the work, it's not a disaster, in short.
Okay, so thank you for the other questions. We will get them answered by email, and massive thank you to Liz for that very informative webinar, and thank you all for attending. We will put the recording up on our website and the slides as soon as possible. So thank you very much.
Yeah, Lucy, one idea I've got is maybe I make an extra slide on the impact on rates, because I think that's a really important point. Would that be helpful?
I think it really would, yes. Yes,
Okay,
please.
all right, I'll do that.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Hello, Lucy.
Hi, Liz. I'm just on still because I'm just collating the questions before I log off.
I can't even get back to so I just thought I should say privately to you, thank you very much.
Okay.
That was
Pleasure.
I hope it was
Thank
okay. Okay, bye.
Absolutely. Bye-bye.